like talking about how sociopathy is a form of developmental brain damage. How does this brain damage? And it is really because human beings are born with extremely premature minds. We don't become fully adult until we're 25, and it's a processor. It's a super processor. Our minds. It takes a lot of attention and focus, and careful parenting, mostly mothering, because they're usually the primary caregivers, to train our minds to be healthy adults. And the patriarchy extremely interferes with a mother's ability to grow her babies into healthy human adults. And we can look at the patriarchy. We can look at the story of Adam and Eve, really, for an example of where our mother, the mother's authority, the mother has been just deleted from that story, from the family, right? Adam and Eve have no mother, and it shows in that story. I've created other videos explaining that. So the key component is availability. The mother's mainly, but also the father's availability to, especially an infant child. The 0 to 3 are the most critical years for laying the neural pathways. Although, anyone who's raised kids knows that it definitely goes well into 25 when you're doing the right work. And so many women, mothers, both don't know what the right work is, and don't have the authority, because of the patriarchy, to do what is absolutely necessary to grow a healthy human adult. Women are probably particularly resilient in some ways because they're women too. I don't know all the reasons, but it's clear that women are more resilient. We're being oppressed, so we kind of have to see it, maybe. The people in charge of funding research like this are usually sociopathic men, and they just don't want to see it. They don't want to see what's happening, and they want to perpetuate themselves, right? A system, and that's just what a system does. A system maintains a status quo just on its own, because it takes a lot of energy and work, and especially when we're talking about human systems, pain, to change the system. So, I'll give an example from my life. My parents weren't particularly available or good parents. They wanted to be. They definitely loved us, but they didn't have the proper training. They were in a horrific system. But something happened when I was an infant that was great for me, and I think laid the foundations for my healthy mind, with a lot of work, right? I've had a lot of therapy. I've been a meditator. I have been a growth-oriented person. So it's not just that. But my dad, when I was just an infant, my dad, who was a doctor, fell for some nurse and fled to England to have a long vacation with this nurse, leaving me, infant Jody, and my mom behind. And so my mom moved back in with her mother and her sister, who was much younger, is 15, and who is like the love of my life, my Aunt Joyce. And she wrote a letter to my dad saying, if you ever want to see Jody again, you're going to leave that bitch. And I'm going to come fly out to meet you with Jody, and we're just going to travel. My mom loves to travel. She's like the original digital nomad, right? And so my dad loved me. And at that point in Canada, I'm guessing there wasn't the kind of family court which destroys a mother's power and ability to take control of her family. It's just horrific. It is criminal, what the family court is doing here in America. And so she said, and so when she made this threat, she could follow it through. And so my dad loved me. And maybe he was overall, like, my dad is a good guy. He's a misogynist, right? But he was a good man. And so he left this woman, this nurse, and said, come. And my mom came with me as a baby. And I spent the first years of my life just with the undivided attention of my parents. They bought this crappy little car and they drove around Europe and then into the Middle East, and I had their undivided attention, and I think that has made all the difference in how I developed. My brother and sister did not benefit from that at all, and it shows.